Okay, so hey everybody. Today I'm welcoming Pete Mompson. He is the editor from the Plow magazine, which is a very good magazine. It's I don't know, you can maybe describe it better, but a Bruderhof publication that has its offices based in the Fox Hill community, which is down in Walden, New York. Same place as Angry Orchard, in fact.
That's right. Well, it's great to be here with you, Laura. And yeah, Plow is a magazine that the Bruderhof is publishing in various forms for about 100 years, actually. So
Going back to Germany, right?
going back to Germany, yeah, right after World War I. And then we picked the name Plow back in 1937 after
Really?
Hitler kicked the community and the publishing house out of Germany. But they just sent over the printing presses beforehand and set them up real fast in England. And so they called it Plow, like this, with the British spelling,
Okay.
which people sometimes ask about.
Okay.
And that's why.
I didn't even know that.
It goes back to England here. Anyway, this is our new issue.
Wow. Okay, so this is the Winter 2021. Oops, make sure my pencil doesn't fall. Winter 2021 edition. If you can't see it, it's a very gorgeous cover. Do you want to talk a little bit about the cover? I'm seeing the golden ratio spiral on there.
Exactly. So what are families for? Every issue has a theme. And this one is what are families for? What is a family? What are families good for?
Love it.
And so naturally, we picked a nautilus or something like that to illustrate that. No, seriously, it was a bit controversial.
Oh,
we actually
really?
ran a poll on Twitter, and this one kind of lost. It came in second, but we liked it better, so we went with it anyway.
Awesome.
It's by this great British artist, and kind of the idea is just, families. Our whole family tree kind of starts way back in the past and proceeds forward, and generation by generation, and new generations shoot out, but we're
beautiful.
connected back to the center. That was the idea.
That's beautiful. That's very
Anyway,
nice.
mostly it just looks great.
And you should, maybe in the description below, I should post the link to this lady's website. Beautiful art. I checked it out. If I had money, I would buy some of it. Anyway, so Pete, let's talk about the issue. Do you want to talk about some of the articles, what your favorites
Sure.
are? I'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, well, going into this, we were asking ourselves, we just had an election here in the U.S. Every election cycle, topics like family can become very controversial and very easily politicized. So we wanted to go deeper. And there's kind of two stories of family that are commonly told. And one is that families are in crisis because of moral breakdown. People are getting married less. People are having kids later. The birth rate's dropping. There's big problems with all kinds of things related to family, and what we need is kind of moral renewal. So that's one story typically told by conservatives. And then there's another story that working families are under attack. It's so tough for parents to raise their kids with employment pressures, health care, child care is inadequate, parental leave. And so that's another story, and that's a story typically told by progressives or democratic socialists or whatever label you want to put on it. And if you look at it from a Christian point of view, there's a third story. And not to get too far into it, but it's a story that's actually compatible with both those two stories, which may be true, but it throws a knot in the works, and that is our family actually goes beyond our biological family. So as important as that is, and as much as that's rooted in the core of what it means to be human, especially marriage and kids and all those things that make life so important, actually our family as members, followers of Jesus, is with all our brothers and sisters, which goes beyond all bounds of culture and nationality, people we like and don't like. Our brothers and sisters are a whole bunch of people we don't necessarily pick. And and they're not always as cute as our kids, right? Sometimes there are other people's kids who aren't cute, right?
I love it. That's great. So do you talk about that in your...
Yeah, so I wrote an editorial about that, talking about some of those things, and then we talked about a whole wide range of things. So what it means to have families going from generation to generation. One of my favorite writers is Edwidge Danticat, the Haitian-American novelist, and she writes about what it was like growing up in this extended Haitian family that was separated because her parents were in Florida, and she and her brother were their uncle in Haiti.
Wow.
And the only way she stayed in touch with her mother was her mother would send her for 10 years a cassette recording every week, just telling her how she loved her. And so all these great depths of family, there's great storytelling, there's also Rabbi Sachs, Rabbi Jonathan Sachs. He was the chief rabbi of the UK and the Commonwealth. He just died really tragically about a month ago. He wrote a beautiful meditation on what marriage is.
Okay.
There's an article about the case for having one more kid.
Yes, I'm looking forward to talking to you about that one.
Okay.
That's actually what I want to talk about today.
That's by the New York Times columnist Ross Douthat, who's a good friend, and he wrote this great piece, The Case for One More Child. American families say they would like to have one more child than they're having. What's stopping them?
Yeah.
And so that's a great piece. But there's also pieces on what is the place of single people in families. That's such a huge issue.
Yeah, it really is.
And we have a beautiful piece about one of our Bruderhof sisters who just passed away, Lotte Berger Keiterling, who actually had 13 children, a lot more than Ross Douthat even recommends. She survived the Holocaust and was a kinder transport child. She was snatched from her Jewish family in Vienna and brought out shortly after the Nazis took over in that country, and made it through, even though she lost her mother. And this is her story. It just
I actually knew Lotte personally, so I really appreciated reading that story.
Right. And she only went back to Vienna.
It was recently, right? 2018?
Yeah. 80 years later, she went back to her hometown and reconnected.
I'm glad she had the good health to be able to do that as well.
And about a month after her death, in August, this last September, they actually put a small monument outside her parents' house mentioning her and commemorating what had happened to them and other Jewish residents of Vienna.
Wow, that's very good. So, Pete, I just want to bring you back to the Ross Douthat article because I really liked it. Very long, but it was very good.
And it has great artwork here. I'll just show the
beautiful.
artwork. The case for one more child here.
I should get some of those toys for Branson, or I should make them.
Yeah, this is actually a painting of toys.
Oh, really? Yeah. Wow. It's photorealistic. I love that.
Why large families will save humanity.
Very good. So, I come from a large family, and I believe you do as well.
Yep, 8 kids.
Yeah, oh, same with us.
Okay.
That's awesome. So I have, when I went to college, people would say, hey, come from a big family. I'm like, yeah, I have 8 kids. And, wow, what?
Right.
And I've been kind of saddened because I loved all my siblings, couldn't do without a single one of them. But I find it interesting and sad how sometimes people find it like distasteful.
Right.
What do you think about that?
And you see that in people's reactions, like almost, your house must have been really messy. You come almost loud. They're kind of looking at you as if you were brought up in some type of rabbit warren.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, but totally not. I mean, hi.
And I think that has a lot to do with really false expectations about what parenting is and almost what a kid is and what a human being is. That each child needs to somehow be a quality child. I've seen this phrase used, like, there's not such a thing as a quality child.
Well, each child is quality.
Each child is quality. Each child is also just a child. And there's not a good child and a bad child. You have to be ready to just plunge into a bit of humanity, right? And that's what I think
I'm
people
learning it as a new mom.
react to. This idea that each child should be this kind of boutique product that 2 people brought up and sort of lavished all this attention on, and they're going to send to some fancy college at the end of it, and they're going to be proud of, and it's going to be kind of a status symbol for them. And that's what, coming from a big family, is the living disproof of that, right?
Well, maybe your parents had 8 trophy children.
Well, I don't know. No. I mean, things at our house was pretty, as you may know, things were kind of woolly at the edges, but it was fine.
Yeah. Okay.
And my mom was working as a physician all through that,
Right.
and she had a career. So these old tired mommy war tropes, within the context of community, actually can play out in very different ways than most people expect.
Yeah, very beautiful ways too, if I may add. I recently read a really great quote. I don't even know where it was from, but it basically is about that whole discussion about a lot of kids where it's actually in a really beautiful poetry form, and I'm probably going to get it totally wrong, but it's basically like the mom, her heart saying, oh no, another child, sigh. but who knows, this may be the next Robin Hood or the next person that's going to, do good things for the world. So that's also another wonderful reason why to bring children into the world. So it's just another thought that I had that maybe in your next issue.
Okay, yeah, you know what? I'll try to find that.
If I find it, I'll send it to you. Anyway, another question that I have for you is also in that article, and I've gotten this a lot in my comments under my videos, have I considered the climate or the environment in having children, and would I consider having less or none at all? Obviously that can't happen because I have two beautiful boys. But what do you think about that? Because I find that an interesting topic.
Right, yeah, and that's one of the things that Ross Douthat and I talked a bunch about when he was putting this piece together, and he actually addresses it. He talks about how Miley Cyrus said she didn't want to have a kid because she couldn't bear the idea of bringing a child into a world such as this, right, where climate change is going to happen and, the world's falling apart. And he says, and I totally agree with him, I don't believe her.
Yeah.
People brought children into the world in the past in the most horrific situations. Mm-hmm. I mean, World War II, we were just talking about. Yeah. Even in the 50s, in the last baby boom, mm-hmm. there was the threat of nuclear war over the horizon at all times. And so, really, but the other piece of it, I think, is much more out there. And I think it's kind of insidious because it spoils people's joy in children. And that is that having children is this kind of selfish thing. You're just trying to make copies of yourself, and at the expense of environment, you're bringing all these little photocopies of your genes into the world, right? That's almost like the really crude form of it. Yeah. And it totally misses the fact that for anybody to solve climate change, for anybody to take care of the elderly and the poor and those with disabilities, there's going to need to be kids. There's going to need to young people. There's going to need to be that energy.
To be the next scientists, to be the next caretakers, yeah.
And so I think that it really falls apart, and it's almost strange how that kind of meme has gotten out there.
Yeah, it's very sad. I thought about this a little bit, and I was thinking how actually having children can make you less selfish.
Right.
I mean, that's something to consider too. I mean, you have to be selfless if you're getting up at like 4:30 in the morning to feed your baby. I mean, that's.
So at the risk, I mean, like, I've 3 kids too. Yeah. So obviously we have a vested interest in a certain side of this argument. Mm-hmm. But the idea that it's really more selfless not to have kids and then just live your life how you like. Yeah. I know for myself, if I had not had kids, I would be a far more selfish person. Yeah. I would just have kept on doing the stuff that I was doing in my mid-20s and sort of ad infinitum. When you have a yelling baby or you have, a 9th grade girl comes in the house with all her issues at the end of a school day and you got to take an hour to talk through them. That's probably the closest I get to being unselfish, at least, mostly unselfish on any given day.
That's great. So you have a daughter in 9th grade. I didn't even know that. Sorry, my husband teaches in the high school.
Yeah,
so.
Actually, she is part of your husband Chris's Science Olympiad Club.
Awesome. So, go Science Olympiad.
Yeah. So she's studying astronomy and ciphers. Yeah.
Very cool.
So we come home and we hit, like formulas for luminosity of heavenly objects, and I'm trying to remember my college math.
That's awesome. So we talked about the Ross Douthat article. Any other favorites that you have that you would want to talk about?
Yeah, I mean, talking about favorites is always dangerous. It's kind of like asking my mom to say which of your 8 kids is your favorite.
And this is the internet, by the way.
But, there's one that kind of stood out in my mind, and there's so many good ones, but it's because it's from a younger writer. It's from Zita Madu, You Can't Go Home Again. He's a Nigerian immigrant. He grew up in a little village in Nigeria, and then he came to Detroit, and he's actually writing about this landlord couple who took him in this completely broken down home in Detroit, but then basically parented him and his siblings while his parents were getting used to this new country. Wow. And how it talks essentially about how we can be family to people who are very unlike us, come from far away, who are strange to us. And so I find that article, just so beautifully written, so poetic. He talks about how his dad just tells stories to keep alive family members who his children never knew, and to keep a sense of connection back to their village where they grew up.
Wow,
And
really
how
cool.
by telling stories about our family members, both our biological family and sort of family like this landlord couple, we can kind of teach our children what family it is they belong to. And it kind of, I found it useful. It's like, I have to tell more stories to my kids about the people I love, about the people who are in my family.
That's really cool. And also connecting that thought back with the Lotte Keiderling story. Speaking of family, she did that for pretty much everybody in the community. Like I was speaking a couple weeks back with her daughter, and basically everybody was her grandchildren. And so that sounds very similar to this.
Well, it was interesting when Lotte died, there was so many of us who said, we had a special connection with Lotte. She was really part of our family. And then you realize that was like,
everybody.
That was almost everybody. So she practiced, what I was just talking about in an amazing way.
So I want to pass that on to my family as well.
I'll try, although I'm finding that the reality of family is that the stuff you'd want to pass on, sometimes it works.
Any tips, you can just send them my way.
Okay, well, you can ask Chris how my daughter's doing.
Okay, I will do that. Okay, so hope you enjoyed this interview, and I would encourage all of you to subscribe to the Plow magazine. And because you watched this video, there will be a link below which will give you a 50% off, because I did the math, but it's 1 issue for free and then 4 others for $18. So you got to do it because it's totally worth it. Oh, and by the way, all your friends are going to wonder what that awesome piece of literature is on your coffee table. Ooh, that is when COVID is over. Well, you can take a picture of it and put it on Instagram. Okay, bye.